Welcome to 10,000 Tacos. I'm your host, Isidro Salas, and today I want to tell you something. It might be controversial or it might not. Not that many people are listening to the podcast anymore, so it probably won't get out. But it's something dear to me, and I thought I'd share it with you. And the reason it's dear to me is because I see it every day. I'm on social media, I see these things, and I want to react to them. And so I'll start off by saying that white people taco nights, right? You hear that. I don't know if you've ever heard the white people taco night. Like I decided for my sake not to be as annoyed with it as it was when I first heard it. So I began to kind of take acceptance that it is a thing for them, for white people, right? And if you've seen the memes, it's white people making Taco Bell tacos and celebrating them, right? Taco Tuesday, it still annoys me. I'm working on it, but I decided to do a little bit more digging into it because I was never okay with white people taco night. And that has nothing to do with white people, except it might have everything to do with them. But if you've been watching this show or listening to this podcast or follow me on social, you know that the taco culture is really, really deep for me. It's so deeply embedded. And so I decided to do some digging in my own head and make sense of why is it that it's sort of bothering me. And I finally came up with the solution in my head. Now, this is my opinion, and it's based on my lived experience. I believe white people tacos are really black people tacos, black and brown people tacos. And I'll try to make that distinction as I go ahead here. I have it written down in front of me, and I'll try to make it because I think at least my perspective, and again, I'm not an expert. I just happened to grow up in a taco truck when my parents did that business for over 25 years, almost 30 years, and it's landed me to where I'm at today. So I have a little bit of credibility. I'll start out with this. Again, if you've ever spent time on the internet over the last couple of years, you've seen that same meme, white people taco night. You know the image, right? This yellow box of hard preformed shell tacos. I hate that word. A foil packet of orange seasoning, whatever that is, they call that taco seasoning. Ground beef drained in the sink, and shredded cold cheddar cheese from the plastic bag, iceberg lettuce, and a dollop of sour cream. Don't know why those are white people tacos. Well, actually, I do know. It's because of Taco Bell. People laugh at it all the time, right? People on TikTok will make fun of it. White people will be playing that video, making fun of themselves. And they joke about it being unseasoned, suburban comfort food. They have taco seasoning and it's still unseasoned. But every time that video scrolls past my screen, my mind doesn't go to the suburbs. It goes to, it goes exactly to the 1980s and into East San Jose. That's where my mind goes, to my childhood home and in front of my house, to be more exact. So again, if you've been watching the show, you or listening to, you know a little bit about this, but if you're new, then I'll give you a little bit of background on this. Not a lot, but at least to get the context. Every single morning, long before the sun came up, my parents would fire up taco truck, if you want it, right? La Lonchera, and pull out of the driveway, and they drive across the Silicon Valley, Santa Clara Valley to be exact, Sunnyvale, North San Jose, all these areas known as Silicon Valley. This is where, in the 80s, construction was happening. It's still happening now, but still. But they spent 10 to 12, possibly even 14 hours out there feeding the people who were building the valley, right? The way it was back then. Construction workers on job sites, farm workers out in the fields. There were fields in Santa Clara Valley. Before it was Silicon Valley, it was Santa Clara Valley, agricultural like crazy. And once those buildings were built, the office workers taking quick lunch breaks. That truck was our family's survival. That's how my parents made their business. But the best part of the day wasn't just out in those routes, right? Every stop that they had. The best part was when my parents pulled up, right? When they came home to the driveway after a 12-hour grind, after a 14-hour day, right? Because once the truck was parked, it became this last unannounced stop of the day where leftovers were on the truck, extra carne asada, the carnitas, warm tortillas, chicken wings, sandwiches, breakfast sandwiches, whatever didn't sell, that was for us. And that was for the kids in the neighborhood. So we became like this place to be after school, 4 o'clock, 5 o'clock, whenever they got home. And so East San Jose back then was working class. It still is, certain parts. Where I grew up is still working class. When I go back and I visit some friends, it's still working class. But plain and simple, there were gente, the people like us. The block was mostly Mexican-American kids, Chicanos. There was Mexicans like me, Mexicans from Mexico, and black kids, and Vietnamese. Vietnamese kids were also a lot there because, it was late 70s and 80s. Do your own research. But I remember there was like 3 white families on our entire block. And to be real with you, they didn't really mess with us after that. They actually became part of our friends, except for one family. They kept their distance, in particularly like a lot of the people that were living around the block, that one family. Go figure. When our truck would, drive into the driveway, like people were already waiting. The rest of the neighborhood just gathered. It became a place. It was really cool. The black kids down the street would come and, they would run over and sit on the curb and they'd get a plate of whatever the food was left over, right? Whether it was just a taco, tortillas, whatever it was, like chips, nachos, whatever that was there to serve. They just got it all, right? And again, they had never tasted something like this. I remember one time, the first time, they had this look on their face, was like, what is this? Because to them, this wasn't what they thought a taco was. Was it what it was supposed to look like? You have to understand the world we were living in back then. To the black kids on my block in the 80s and 90s, a taco was something they saw on television. A commercial where, on Saturday mornings and cartoons watching or whatever, it was a Taco Bell taco. It was old El Paso commercials showing perfectly golden, crunchy shells packed with brown meat and beef and bright green lettuce. That's what they knew. Now, a lot of people today, Taco Bell sounds like the cheapest thing. Actually, it's not anymore, right? And we know why. But back then, for low-income families in East San Jose, taking a family of 4 or 5 to Taco Bell was an absolute luxury. It wasn't something you just did on a Tuesday night because you didn't feel like cooking. Fast food cost real money. And that was, to a lot of households, they didn't have that back then. At least the people that I knew. So how did those kids eat tacos? Well, I know this from personal experience because they told me, right? Their moms made them from them at home. So picture this, a single black mother finishes her 15-hour shift, or the third of her, third jobs, 15, 16, 18 hours on her feet, cleaning, working at a factory, serving, doing things, whatever she had to do to keep the roof over their heads, right? She comes home completely exhausted. Her back aches, her feet hurt, and she's got about 20 minutes to feed 3 hungry kids before they go to bed. She opens the cupboard, pulls down a cheap yellow box of corn shells that probably cost $1. She browns some pound of cheap ground beef, stretching it with water, and throws that 50-cent seasoning packet over it. Packs the meat into these rigid shells, tops them with whatever cheese she may have in the fridge, and puts the plate down on the table. Those moms weren't trying to emulate traditional Mexican cuisine. They were performing an act of pure, unconditional love and survival. They were feeding their children on a budget, against the clock, with the ingredients the grocery store sold them. Those hard-shell tacos were good to those kids because their mothers made them with care, with love, whatever it was that they were trying to survive. But when those same kids would come to our driveway at the end of the day and tasted our leftover street tacos, right? The tortilla, the cilantro, the cebolla, whatever they want, a light bulb went off. They realized that there was an entire world of food outside of that yellow box. So this brings me back to where we started. I believe white people tacos are black people tacos. Today, the internet looks at this hard shell ground beef taco and labels it a white people taco. And look, I get why the memes exist. Corporate food chains in the 60s and 70s took traditional Mexican food, gentrified it, sanitized it, shelf stabilized it, into these cardboard boxes and marketed them directly to white suburban households who found authentic Mexican spices perhaps a little too intimidating or too ethnic, if you ask me. And that's the history of advertising. That's what happens. I mean, you look at a Taco Bell commercial today. They're not doing the old, make a run for the border. They're doing today. They've switched it up to whatever's relevant today to capture that new generation of people. And it's having an effect everywhere. But that's not what we're talking about. This history of advertising is what it is, but that's not the history of eating. When you strip away the television commercials and the corporate branding, what is ground beef, right? Taco meat? It's more than that. In reality, it's a high-calorie, low-cost food. It's a shelf stable of carbs. It's stretching cheap meat to feed multiple mouths. It's fast preparation, and it's easy to clean up for exhausted working parents. In other words, let's call it what it is. It is the absolute textbook definition of struggle food. White people tacos are struggle food. So it's not just black, it's brown. It's people who struggle, that's what finally hit me. And if there's something that defines the black culinary tradition in America, and I don't mean to overstep, so if I offend anybody, please don't take it in that intention. But from soul food down to weekday dinners, this is a part of taking struggle food, taking the scraps, taking the cheapest ingredients available and turning them into comfort. That's what struggle food is. So when people laugh at hard-shell tacos as a white suburban invention, right, because they like to claim they invented things, they're completely ignoring the millions of black and brown working class families across America who relied on those exact same meals to survive in the 70s, 80s, and 90s. It wasn't a cultural trend. It was dinner for them. Looking back at it all now, sitting in that driveway, waiting for my parents to come home in East San Jose, something really beautiful was happening without any of us realizing it. Our taco truck spent about 12 to 13 hours feeding workers across Silicon Valley. But when it returned home, it became a bridge. It brought Mexican kids, Vietnamese, black kids together in the same curb, in the same driveway. And they would trade stories. I would hear stuff that, just made me happy now that I was a part of that. Sharing the days left over with these tacos that my parents would come home. And building a community. That's what it was. We were building a community. We just didn't know it. We learned about their lives. They learned about our food. We realized that despite our different backgrounds, our families were operating under the exact same economic pressures. Our parents, my mom and dad, putting 14, 15-hour days, 6 days a week, sometimes 7. My parents were on their feet all day, driving across, serving people in Silicon Valley and Sunnyvale and Santa Clara, everywhere, right? My friends' moms were pulling double shifts. We were all figuring out how to make a life out of hard work and limited resources. Isn't that the American dream? The food might have looked different. Corn tortillas on our end, hard shells, I hate that word, on their end, but the motivation behind it was identical. Survival, care, and family. That's what mattered. So the next time you're scrolling through social media and you see someone making fun of white people tacos, and I kind of do that. I don't make fun of it, but somebody, I'll admit to some of that. Do what I did. Take a second to look at those yellow boxes and see what's behind that. You'll find a lot of culture. Don't just see this meme. See the single mom working a 15-hour day in 1988, opening her pantry, doing everything in her power to make sure her kids didn't go hungry that night. That hard shell isn't a white suburban invention. It's a struggle culture in a cardboard box. And if there's one thing the neighborhood taught me those many years ago in East San Jose is that struggle knows no race, no class, no color, but community will always find a way to feed itself. And that is all for this episode of 10,000 Tacos. Thank you for joining us. I am Isidro Salas, the proud son of a taquero. Taqueros, actually. And we'll see you next time. Until then, I'm Isidro Salas, and this is 10,000 Tacos.